Hi there. Welcome to my interview with myself today. My name is Stephanie Arnold. I'm a Beachbody coach and founder of the Anchored Nation team, and I'm going to be interviewing myself. We have been doing a training recently that taught us that we need to figure out what our story is so we know what to share and who we are and where we come from, kind of thing. So this is an activity that I would really like to do with my team as we move forward, but I wanted to start with me. So I'm going to be interviewing myself. So let's see if I can minimize. I can't minimize while I'm recording. Okay. Well, let's try to shrink me then. There we go. Okay. So I'm actually going to put me at the top here. So there we go. Okay. So I'm going to dive straight into this. So the first question for me today is, what is your story? In other words, how did you fall down the rabbit hole of needing to transform yourself physically and emotionally so you can either once again or for the first time in your life reach your true physical, emotional, and spiritual potential? Holy cow, is that a loaded question, right? There are some easier questions, but we want to get to the root of this, right? So we're going to start from the beginning and figure out where your story starts. So for me, I really believe that my story began as a child. I grew up in a home that my early childhood, my parents were not believers. We didn't go to church, but that wasn't I don't remember much of that. When I start to remember my faith, I guess as a kid, I remember being happy in our home. I loved being at home with my parents. I really felt like we had a great life. And then it was about, I think, 6th or 7th grade is when I remember things started getting rocky in our household. My dad came to me one morning into my bedroom, and he fell on the floor and started just bawling his eyes out. And my dad and I have always been really close, and I was like, what the heck is this? And all he said to me in that moment was, your mom doesn't love me anymore. And it really, like, being the daddy's girl, I was daddy's princess like my whole life, having that almost as like I took that burden on myself in that moment, and immediately in my head my mom became the enemy, and she was destroying our family. She was ruining our family. And the next year, I guess, my parents were separated. My dad moved out. It was very ugly between the two of them, and I very much I lived with my mom most of the time, the way court usually delegates that kind of thing. I lived with my mom most of the time, but I would stay with my dad a little bit, and I loved my time with him. And I told you I'm a daddy's girl, and so I was very much one-sided. I wanted to be with my dad. However, I told you that in the beginning we weren't believers and we weren't going to church or anything like that. Well, at some point during that, I don't remember when exactly, my dad did give his life to Christ, and he started living a Christ-centered life, which in the beginning we went to a very legalistic church, so we learned a lot of the rules of the Bible, and it was very black and white. We didn't really he was a brand new Christian. I accepted Christ at a really young age too, and all we learned was rules. Like the church that we were part of didn't focus on grace and forgiveness and that we can't earn our salvation. It was just like, God says don't do this, so don't do it. And there was a lot of don't do it. And that's what I remember as a kid. So I was on my dad's side with this whole pending divorce, my parents being separated. And when I was home, my mom was very much into her life and her friends and her job. So at home, at that point in, I guess, middle school, I was pretty much able to do what I wanted at her house. And then I would have the rules, 1 or 2 days a week when I was with my dad. And so I would be able to listen. I would be able to wear 2-piece bathing suits, and I would be able to listen to Justin Timberlake, or NSYNC as it was back then. And I was able to just have what I thought was freedom, because my mom was doing her thing and I was doing my thing when we were home. And she was mad at me because she knew how I felt about her kicking my dad out, and I was mad at her for doing it in the first place. So our relationship was pretty tense at that time. Well, fast forward, right? I'm in middle school, the most transformative years of your life. I'm in 8th grade now. And I think it was around my birthday. I'm not going to go into details because that's not my story. But sometime around the summer, I think after 8th grade, my parents decided to give it a shot again and get back together. My mom had, since after she had lived without my dad for almost a year, she was fed up with it. She didn't want it anymore. She gave up alcohol. She gave up her friends and her social life, and she wanted her husband back, and she was working hard towards that. She gave her life to Christ, and she really started diving into her faith. And my parents, and it brought my dad back, right? So they were able to bring their marriage back together, which is awesome. But again, I'm in 8th grade now, some of the most awkward, hard years for a child. And they decided when my dad moved back home that in order to start to give our family a fresh start and rebuild our relationships, that we would move to a new place. So we moved into a new house that was 45 minutes from our past house. So I just got uprooted to a brand new school district, left all my friends. I'm not old enough to drive yet, so I can't go see them. And I have to convince my parents or their parents to drive 45 minutes to take me to go see somebody. So I was really frustrated. I was excited for a new place to live, and I was really excited to have my parents back together. But I was already beginning to build resentment towards them at that point in my life because of what they were doing to me. And that's how I took it, is what they were doing to me. And then they got back together, and they spent the next probably year to 2 years working on their marriage. And for them, they had a lot to work through, right? When you get separated, when you break that kind of trust, there's a lot to deal with, because it doesn't start in that moment where nothing started the day that my dad said that, she doesn't want me anymore. It was years before that, like things that led up to that. So they have to work through all that. And as a married woman now, and even then, I understand, not then, since then, I've understood that, the marriage comes first, right? The kids are a product of the marriage, and I need my marriage. I need my husband by my side, and I need that relationship to be strong in order to give to my children. So they spent majority of their time together building their relationship. They would go off for weekend getaways, like workshops and marriage seminars and stuff like that, and really just focus on themselves. And they became, great. I remember one of my sister's boyfriends when she was a kid was always like so confused. Like our parents were always like, he thought my parents were so weird because they were always like making out and hanging out like all over each other. Like he'd tap her butt and she'd be tickling him. Like they were like teenagers in love. And it was really cool to watch. But as the teenager in the house now, I just continued to build resentment towards them because they weren't giving me any attention. Like, that's great that you guys are happy, but they decided also to homeschool me when they moved me across the country. So now, or now I say across the country, it's what it felt like when I was that age. But when they moved across town, I had no way to make new friends. I had no way to build a friendship base or anything social in our new home because they decided to homeschool. And as I, continued to just build resentment towards them in my heart, I didn't really know. Looking back now, I know exactly that's exactly what it is. I didn't know it then, but I built up a lot of resentment towards my parents. And then we got involved with a different church, a much better church, much healthier church for us. And we learned a lot about our faiths, and we all kind of grew as a family unit, as Christians as well. But I never let go of that resentment. And my parents would have like very strict rules on me. Like, looking back now, there's probably rules that I will enforce on my daughter, to be honest, but rules like that I couldn't ride in teenagers' cars, that I couldn't wear a two-piece bathing suit, that I couldn't see PG-13 movies, that I couldn't see rated R movies, that we would never talk about sex or drugs or alcohol. It was just a no-go. You don't have sex, you don't do drugs, you don't drink alcohol, period. Like, it was never something we talked about. There was just things that were just like, this is black and white. God says no, don't do it. We don't do it. We don't talk about it. We just don't. And so that's how I began to go into my teenage years, was with these really strict guidelines. I threw a big enough fit for my parents to allow me to go to school in our new home. And so I started building friends, but I had been in private school for most of my life, and now I was not in private school. So I was this very sheltered little girl that was just thrown into public school my sophomore year of high school. And it was overwhelming. And I wanted to do anything I could to fit in. I wanted girlfriends. I wanted the boys to like me. And I had to learn quick what stuff meant that I'd never heard of before, and just really tried. I really compromised. I wouldn't say compromised, because at the time I didn't know who I was. But I made a lot of decisions just based on trying to be liked and be popular and be accepted amongst my peers, right? And those are the hardest years of your life, right? When you look backwards and you see teenagers now going through it, it's crazy what you deal with, and the emotions and the hormones and everything that's going on through your head in this process. So I had all these rules, and so none of my friends had those rules because they weren't Christian households. They were just kids living their lives whose parents didn't care or had their own world or whatever, and whose parents just weren't as strict. And I was very just jealous of all of my friends. And I would make my parents out to be the bad guy, like every time. Like I would come home and our relationship would be great. We'd have dinner as a family. We'd hang out on the outside. It looked like we were great. My parents probably thought we were a great, solid unit. And meanwhile, every moment I was with someone else or texting someone else, right? That was big. It was T9 back then and AIM. All I was doing was bashing my parents and frustrated about how hard they are on me and how miserable my life is, and just complaining about everything. And then I would do things. I would break their rules, right? They'd catch me catching a ride home from school or with a friend, or they'd catch me, at school wearing something that I wasn't wearing when I left the house, something like that. And I'd get in trouble. And they'd punish me. And then I would just complain more to my friends. Like my mom just cut up my driver's license. Like she just cut up my school ID so I can't leave for lunch. She doesn't give me an allowance. She doesn't do this. And I would just complain. And then I would do worse things to break their rules so they would punish me more. And so I had more to complain about, I think. I don't really know. But I never thought about consequences of my actions. And that's a pattern that I can look back for. Even today, I still struggle with that. Not being aware and thinking intentionally about consequences in my life. So anyway, that's high school. I just continued to build up resentment towards them. When I was ready to graduate and go to college, I graduated by like the skin of my teeth. And I got accepted into a school. And I had been saving up. I'd been working a job and saving up all my money so I could afford to go the tuition and room and board and stuff like that. And right before graduation or right after graduation, something happened. I totaled someone else's car, or not totaled. I wrecked another friend's car, and my parents made me use all of the money that I had saved up for my tuition to cover that cost. And looking back now, it was probably a move on their part to stop, or okay, I can't say looking back. What I thought immediately was that they're trying to take away my freedom so that I can't leave, because now I'm 18 years old, but now I have no money. So my plan just went up in smokes. So I stayed home for another year working, going to community college to be able to save up more money so I could go to school. And I finally did it. About a year later, I left and went to college, and my parents agreed. We were on really good terms because I knew that I was leaving. I knew I needed their help. And so me and the fact that I resented them, I always thought that they owed me, right? So I wanted to use them 100% for their financial benefit to go to college. And they agreed to pay for my tuition in college, or not tuition. They agreed to pay for my room and board, my apartment in college. So the second month I'm at college, my parents, a friend of my parents, let them in and show them my MySpace page. Remember that stuff? Yeah. And on it, I had tons of pictures of me in full makeup, full hair, dressed, going clubbing, probably pictures of me drunk, of just thinking I was cool and popular. And I was partying a lot. I was drinking a lot. And as soon as my parents were made aware of that, they told me flat out, like, okay, if you're going to do this lifestyle, if this is what you're going to do, you're not going to do it on our dime. So we're going to stop paying your rent if you don't stop this lifestyle. And it was a threat. And I totally called them on. I knew that my mom was not one to make threats and not go through with them. So I knew when they said that they meant it. But I wasn't ready to give up my lifestyle. I had just gotten there. I'd only been in college for 2 months. I had 4 more years of this fun. So I sat down and said, okay, well, what am I going to do to pay my rent then? And I sat down, and in my head, again, not thinking consequences, I said, okay, well, if I went and got a real job, right, I'm not going to get paid for 3 weeks because, you go through training for a week, even if I could wait at tables or whatever, you don't get paid for like a good solid 3 weeks. You got to go through training, and, first pay cycle, I'm not going to get paid. And that first paycheck won't be enough to cover my rent. So I need to think outside the box. So I decided, okay, well, I could sell drugs. I'd never smoked pot at that point in my life. But I had a ton of friends that did. So I knew I had the connections to find somebody that would allow me to sell for them, who I would sell to. I didn't think that through, but I decided that was an option for me. And my second option was, I knew that my friends in Orlando had told me about this really amazing strip club in Tampa, and they would literally drive, as soon as they all turned 18, my friends from Orlando would drive an hour and a half to Tampa to go to this club because it had the prettiest girls in all the state. And I remember thinking of that. I don't know why or how it came into my head, but it did. It popped into my head, and I said, let's go. Let's see if I could do that. So I wrangled up a couple friends, right? I had friends that were very willing to go, and decided to go pay, cover, and go to this totally a strip club for the night to go check it out and see if I thought this was something I could do. I grew up dancing. It's my passion. I love to dance. So I was like, I can dance, right? So checked it out, interviewed a couple of the girls there, asked them what they made and what they, like what it was like to work there. And I walked away thinking, okay, I can do this. So I called the next day, got myself an interview, and I started. I got the job. I started, man, and I was making $500 to $800 a night, and it was amazing. So I caught my rent like that, right? A few months later, I even got myself a second apartment in a better area of town that was more convenient for me. And it was crazy. And that's honest. That's what I did for my money. And it was a secret that I kept because I was a bit ashamed of it, but it was a secret that I kept. But then I met a friend who was very proud that she did that as well. And we became friends, and we're actually really good friends still today. I love her to death. But she was very vocal about the fact that she did it. And so it kind of gave me the courage to talk about it. So then really soon I would just brag about it because it was a great conversation piece, because nobody believes that when you meet them in a bar. Like, oh, what do you do? So anyhow, I started talking about it a lot. And the more that I talked about it, the less it bothered me, the less I felt shame about it. And so it was something that just became regular life, right? And I didn't have to work often. I didn't go a lot because I made so much when I went. So it wasn't like I was working 40 hours a week. I was working like 1 to 2 nights a week. And so that gave me plenty of time to party and spend all my money. So it was working out quite well for me. I felt like I was doing great. I felt on top of the world. I had all the money I needed. And I started to feel that resentment again from my parents. And I began to wish almost that somebody would come in to my club that would be, my dad also, I didn't tell you this, my dad worked in Tampa at the time when I was going to school in Tampa. So he would commute back and forth to Orlando. And I had this like secret wish that someone would come in and actually be a coworker of his and would like put the dots together, see like a picture of me on my dad's desk and put the dots together and tell my dad. Because I knew if my dad knew what I was up to, that I didn't want to tell him myself, but I knew that if he found out what I was up to, he would show up at that place and he would knock down the door and drag me out by my ankles. He would probably go to jail, get arrested, trying to rescue me. And that's what I wanted. Like, I wanted him to care that much. I wanted him to know. I knew he cared. I wanted him to know because I wanted him to rescue me. After doing this, I realized that I really did, like, this wasn't like scalable. This wasn't something I wanted to do. You know, I got about, I think 6 months into a year. I think I did it for about 9 months. So I guess close to the end of working there, I was being recruited. And I didn't really realize it at the time. Looking back now and watching all the crime shows that I've watched, I can totally see it. But I was being 100% recruited for no joke, a pimp. And I was being befriended by a couple of the girls in the club that were telling me about how great their life was. They always came to work. I envied them because they would come to work and I would spend my money on knockoff designer stuff. And they were coming to work with Louboutin bags that I knew were $3,000. They would be coming in wearing $1,000 heels, and they had all the designer makeup. They had everything, and they were driving Lexuses, and they would tell me about this stuff. And it sounded great because I was like, well, I'm working my butt off, but I'm not working my butt off. I'm only working a couple, nights a week. But if I worked more than that, then I could do that kind of thing. And so they were all kind of wooing me a little bit and trying to bribe me essentially into joining them and being essentially pimped out, think prostitute style. I would be owned by a man that I knew well because he came into the club all the time and he was complimenting me and flirting with me and trying to win me over kind of thing. And I was deciding. I knew that it was probably not the best decision I would make, but I was considering it because I wanted a nice car. I wanted a designer things. I mean, to this day, I still want a Louis Vuitton. I say Louis Vuitton because those are the shoes that I want, but Louis Vuitton bag. And so it was been this really, really hard time for me deciding that. And in that time personally, I met a guy, was kind of dating him on the side. And I knew that wouldn't really work. And I really wanted to see where things were going with this guy. So I decided to give it a shot. So I told them no, I didn't want to do that. And now looking back, if I would have said yes and signed up, I would never probably have been able to walk away from that industry. And I would probably still be there oh God, I hope I wouldn't still be there today. But I can't imagine what my life would look like if I would have said yes, because it would have put me on such a dark path that would have been very hard to undo what I did. So I thank God every day for bringing that guy, who is not my husband, just a guy that I dated, into my life at that time to give me that second option, to let me think that, okay, well, there's something else that I could try. And so I decided to, and he expressed that it wasn't something he was very cool with me doing. So I stopped and I got a job. He was very well connected in our college. So he got me a job as a promoter at a club, selling shots or something like that. So still had a job, and I had to work more because I wasn't making the same kind of money, but it was good. And I was happy, and I felt good about it. And I was feeling a lot more pride in my work. Mind you, I was still dressed like a prostitute and in a nightclub selling shooters, but it felt better for me personally and inside. And knowing that I said no to that lifestyle was really a big moment for me moving forward. Well, then a few months later, I'm now in my sophomore year of college, my second year, maybe 2.5 years in. And I found myself pregnant. I got pregnant with the guy that I was dating. And I just knew it, right? As a woman, I don't know. One day I was just sitting on the bed. I was like, I wasn't throwing up, but I was like, something's not right inside of me. It's like, I think that I'm pregnant. Got a test, went to the doctor. Sure enough, I am. And they pretty much, at the school, you get free, as a student at college, you get free medical aid. But as soon as I showed proof of pregnancy on my medical record at school, they can no longer see you until they have proof of termination of pregnancy or birth certificate, because they're not certified in obstetrics and gynecology, all that. So I went to that doctor and they said, okay, well, here you go. Here's the option for, I literally at my school nurse, they said, okay, well, here's the number for the OB, the local like OB, and here's the number for the local Planned Parenthood. Happy deciding. That was literally what they said to me. And I went home and had it wasn't a one day. I spent several days trying to figure out what to do and what I was going to do. And I grew up in a home that was a Christian home that believed 100% that abortion is a sin and a crime and is not something that you do. But I couldn't picture what my life would look like with a baby right now at 18, maybe I was 19. I was 19 at the time. And I struggled a lot with it. The guy that I was dating was very supportive. He told me that his parents would be supportive and they would help us. And he was going to he would take care of the baby if that's what I wanted, but it's my choice to make. And I keep swaying back and forth. I'm sorry. But he let me know that it was my choice to make. And so I made the choice. I decided to end my pregnancy. And it was the most numbing experience of my entire life. Just how they don't want you to be emotional when you go to make that decision, I guess. So like the whole process, going to Planned Parenthood and making the decision and making the appointment and finding out how you handle like what you need to do before it, like they treat it like you're just getting like a tooth taken out or something. Like they treat it very much without any, I don't know, like I feel like it should be like a sacred decision to make. And I feel like it was handled very transactionally. Anyhow, so it was really hard to purchase process. I was kind of like, I blacked out of a lot of it. Like, and it was just a really hard time for them to talk so matter-of-factly to me about a decision that I wasn't 100% sure I wanted to do. I went through with it and came home from that appointment, and I told my boyfriend at the time, we are no longer having sex ever, because I will never I will never do this again. I will not make this decision again. I can't. I had friends that I knew had done it, and I knew other girls in our school that had done it, like birth control, that had done that like 3 or 4 times. And I was like, that's not going to be me. I made a mistake. I don't know if this was the answer, but this is the answer that I chose, and I will not make this decision again. So I'm not going to allow you or anyone to put me in this situation to have to make this decision again. So I said, we're done having sex. He didn't handle that very well, but he handled it, and we moved forward. And the next 2 months of my life, I spent getting blackout drunk most days. I'd wake up at noon, go have lunch somewhere. Maybe I would go to a class, not much though, barely. I didn't pass many of my classes. And I would just go out every night of the week and just drink as much as I possibly could. I wasn't old enough to get into those bars, so honestly, I don't even remember how I pulled that off, but I just knew the right people, the right places. And I would just get wasted all the time. I have like so many ridiculously scary things that happened to me because of how out of control I was. Right? I got roofied once. I blacked out in my car with the keys in my hand and in the driver's wheel in the parking lot one time. Like I woke up on a friend's couch. Like I didn't know how I got there. Like it was just like really bad, negative experience. And that's how I spent the next several months of my life. And I don't know. I don't know what the final straw, if there was a final straw, but one day I came home from work to my apartment where my boyfriend lived with me, and so did my best friend, but nobody was home. I came into my apartment. I dropped my stuff on the bed. I shut my door, and I literally collapsed to the floor and just cried. And I bawled like a baby, and I screamed and I yelled. And I was mad, and after probably close to an hour of that, of just sobbing uncontrollably, I just had a moment I had a moment where it became really clear that I had gotten myself on such an awful, ugly path. And I was only 19 years old, and my future was not looking bright, right? I was failing most of my college classes. I was 2.5 years into college with like probably a year's worth of credits because I kept dropping out of classes or failing them. I was working as a shop girl at a nightclub, getting groped and hit on and just disgusted by guys all night long. You know, I was embarrassed for how much I was drinking and how I was influencing I remember dragging my best friend out who would like, she's such a homebody. I love her to death. And we're still really good friends. And she didn't want to go out at all. Didn't want to drink, would rather stay at home and watch Law and Order SVU with me. And I would drag her out kicking, screaming because I wanted somebody to go out with me and drink with me. And like, this is the influence that I was being on other people. And the fact that I was living with a boyfriend when I told myself, I would never do that. And it was just really dirty. I felt dirty. I felt gross. I didn't recognize myself. I looked backwards at the girl that, loved her daddy and wanted to make him happy and wanted to grow up one day and be married to a handsome guy that loved Jesus and to have beautiful babies and stay home with those babies. And I was like, how? Like, that is 100% in the opposite direction of where I'm at right now. How on earth am I ever going to get there? And God just like called me out on my behavior and all my crap in that moment. And I got up from the floor that day and decided, I'm done. I'm done being this person, being this version of myself that takes advantage of other people, that uses other people, that manipulates them, that holds on to resentment and blames my parents for everything. Every bad decision I would make, I would tie it back to somehow my parents, it was their fault. I would tie everything to them. And I blamed them. And I wouldn't accept responsibility for my own decisions. And I spent the next few months figuring out how to get myself out of this mess and how to turn this person into a healthy version of myself. And part of that was my job. So the next day I went to Outback Steakhouse and applied to be a server. But when you're starting out as a server and you don't have experience, you really don't get experience to start with. Nobody wants to hire a server who's never served. So I became a hostess at Outback, literally probably making $7 or $8 an hour. And I made it. I picked up a lot of shifts. I worked as many hours as I possibly could. And eventually got promoted to be able to do takeout orders or something like that and make a couple extra dollars. And I would do catering events. I would do anything I could to make money there because I was fully dressed at that job. And that people were looking at me to take care of them, to organize things, and to take care of customers in a way that I'd never done before. And so it was really, and it felt like honorable work. Like I was a little bit embarrassed that I worked as a hostess at a restaurant. That was my job, but I was paying my bills and I was taking care of myself. One of the next steps that I did was I decided to start going to church again. And I'd never tried to go to a church in Tampa. So I decided I would go back to my home church. So I would literally drive an hour and a half on Sunday morning to go to church, to which I would like slip in the back because my parents were both on staff there. So I didn't want them to know that I was there. I would go sliding to the back row. And as the preacher, the worship music would play. Worship is my favorite. And God just uses music. Music is, I think it's my dad. He's such a music guy. But he really instilled that into me and how powerful music is when I was so young. And so music for me is like a huge outlet when it comes to expressing my feelings and clearing things out in my head. So the worship music would play and I couldn't sing because I was crying. I would literally sit in the back row of the church and bawl like a baby through the whole worship part, through the whole announcements and the sermon, all of it. And then right before church would end, I would just grab my purse and sneak right back out the door before, anybody could stop me because I knew a lot of people in that church too. And my mom was very smart because people would tell her, like, Stephanie was here. Did you see that? Stephanie was here and she was crying. And my mom was just like, yep, that's great. That's great. And she didn't try to jump in on me and fix me and figure out what's wrong with me and demand an apology from me. And because I hurt her really bad in this whole process. And I'd really cut her out and cut her off completely. And so she just gave me my space and just pretended that she didn't know I was there. And it was what I needed at the time because I wasn't ready to talk to anybody. I was just trying to straighten myself out with me and God at that time. And on one of those visits to church, I very briefly met a really beautiful guy that was very clear that he loved Jesus. And I immediately had it hit me. I've never experienced this before or since, I'm glad, but it hit me in the moment that I saw him across the room. I'm like, that is the man that you prayed for. Like, that's the guy. That's him. That's your husband. And I was really like, he's a stranger, but he's really hot. So, okay. And I went home and prayed about it and tried to think through that and came home and broke up with my boyfriend the next day or maybe that day and asked him to move out because God really took those feelings for him away, especially when he showed me this is the guy that you're going to marry. So what are you wasting your time with this one for? So I broke up with my boyfriend and continued to spend my days making myself better, going to class, showing up, passing my tests, doing my homework, working on a budget. I started handling my finances and tithing, giving to the church even when I was making hardly any money, and choosing to not go out, choosing to stay home and to go have dinner with my friends instead of meet them at the bar for drinks or, and cut out certain friends that weren't healthy for me at the time. And I just began cutting the negativity out and slowly replacing it with positive things. And it was about a few months later, I finally got the courage to make up and apologize to my parents and try to fix that relationship and asked them pretty much to move back home because I was trying to get things right. And I knew that I kept slipping. I had good intentions, but I kept slipping up if I hung out with the wrong person or I was regretting, my breakup. Like if I was feeling lonely or I was regretting, where I was spending my money or something like that. And I'd have a weak moment. Everything was so accessible. All I had to do is text a friend and I could get drunk in a minute, and so, or have somebody over to come hang out with me. And it was just not a healthy environment for me to grow in. So I knew that I needed out. So I made up with my parents and asked them if they'd allow me to come move home, to which of course they were like, oh my gosh, yes. Like they'd still let me move in today if they wanted, if I brought Ryan. But so they were welcomed me home like the prodigal son. They didn't lord anything over my head. We had a couple tough conversations, but then it was never something that was brought up consistently. And that really showed me a completely different side of Jesus almost in the way that they accepted me back. I was 100% the prodigal son. If you don't know that Bible story, asks for his inheritance early. His parents give it to him. He leaves with it. He spends every dime of it. He ends up, he spends it all, wastes it away, partying and celebrating and having fun. And then he finds himself in a pigsty, feeding the pigs, trying to eat their food because he's so hungry. And he decides, I'm going to go back and work for my dad. I'm going to go back and ask to be one of his servants because his servants get treated better than this. And he goes back home to ask that. And his dad throws this ridiculous party. And he's like, my son that left has now returned. And his dad doesn't even punish him. His brother's confused because he's like, wait a minute. He just gave away. He just spent all your money. He did this, he did this. And the dad's like, no, my son was lost and now he's found. And so that's exactly how I felt when they welcomed me back home and let me come stay with them while I continued to grow. And I went back to college in Orlando and, started to slowly build a relationship with my now husband, Ryan. But it was a friendship at first because he wanted nothing to do with me because he knew I was very open about who I was because I was, bragging about all of my accomplishments kind of thing as a party girl. And that wasn't something that was attractive to him at all. So we started off as friends and after 6 to 8 or 9 months or so, he finally agreed to take me out on a date, to which I told him that he's going to take me on the best date he's ever taken anyone, because this is going to be my last first date, and I'm going to tell our kids about this one day. I'm shocked that he still took me out, and he still took me out again after that and married me. So I'm very glad. I'm very grateful, because we got a really cute story to tell our kids. But yeah, so that brings me to I haven't been to a low point like I was when I hit that floor when I was 19 years old, frustrated in the mess that I'd created, the mess that was 100% my fault, and taking ownership of it. And since then, I have worked just consistently on trying to build myself up, build healthier habits, and replace ugly habits. When I see something, I do a lot of personal development, because when I see something that's wrong with me and I see a pattern, I work to fix it. I do research and I figure out what's wrong. And sometimes I don't like the research, and so I decided I don't want to deal with it. Like my nails, still horrible. I bite my nails. It's disgusting. I'm embarrassed by it. But every time I do research on how to stop or what's causing it, I just decided that I don't care enough. And it's a silly habit, so it doesn's matter. So that's one that it's still on my list to get done. But anyhow, since that moment, that was my turning point at 19. I said, I'm never going to be in this situation again. And I'm never going to let myself get to this dark place. And so since then, I've had ups and downs along the way. When Ryan and I finally got married, we dated for like 4 years. It was a 4-year-long process of me growing in myself and in my confidence, to be able to be strong enough to be somebody's wife even. Forget being a mom. It took me another several years, and will take me more years. But we got married, we moved in together. And a few months into our marriage, Ryan was really unhappy with his job. He found a job that he really liked, that he thought was really interesting. And we decided we wanted him to be happy, so it was worth taking a pay cut. So for us, money has never been something that's like the end all for us. We've always seen like our pursuit of happiness and our quality of life for us is more important than the dollar amount on our paycheck or in our bank account. And so we established that really early on in our marriage, when we said, okay, you're not happy and you think this job is going to make you happy, so let's go to try this job. And he took like a 3/4 pay cut or something ridiculous. And then a few months in, he was absolutely fell in love. He knew he wanted to advance in this company and grow. And so we knew the best chance for him to do that was to move to another city to get a chance for promotion faster. So we did. We moved to DC from Orlando. We were there for 2 years, and then Ryan got the promotion that he had been after to his like dream job, and it was going to be in Philadelphia. So we moved to Philadelphia, and we spent the first 3 months there. I was depressed because I couldn't find a job. Since I stopped, selling shots and then hostessing, I went on to work in other restaurants. I waited tables and I bartended in restaurants. I never in a bar again, but in restaurants. And so that's all I did. So I never really had a career. I always kind of thought that was something I was doing until I figured out my career. Before we did get married, I finished my degree. I have a degree in business management, and I just didn't know what I wanted to do with it. I got that degree because it made the most sense. Like I figure I can use this anyway. Business management, I can use it anywhere, no matter what I do. So I couldn't find a job. I was looking everywhere. We had no social network. We moved there. We had no friends. And I spent the first 3 months on my computer all day long trying to find a job. And I couldn't. I probably sent out 100 job applications and resumes. And I think maybe 3 people responded to me, to even say like, oh, thanks, the position's been filled. Oh, thanks, we'll consider this. Like nobody would even respond to the applications. So I was just beyond frustrated, and I felt completely valueless and worthless. And when I finally did get my first job interview, I got a phone interview, and the one thing that she asked me on the phone was about work-life balance kind of thing. And I mentioned that I wanted to have a baby. And she wasn't discriminating against me, but then the conversation took a turn towards what I want that to look like. And I pretty much told her, well, I want to be able to work from home. So I want to be able to have a job that I can do that. And that wasn't the job that she was trying to hire me for in that moment. So I threw myself under the bus in that interview. And then I did it again at my next interview for another job in person. They asked me to fill out I thought it was a personality test while I was taking it. And it was actually like a leadership test. And instead of me being like, I thought they was just trying to figure out what kind of person I am. No, it was a leadership test. And because of the way I took it, I failed it. And the guy told me straight up, like, I don't hire anybody that fails this, but you're a friend of a friend. So I'd be willing to let you, come be a cashier at our restaurant. And I 100% broke down into tears and sobbed like a baby in a job interview because I was so embarrassed that I failed. And that this was the only in-person interview that I got. And I blew it. And I wasn't going to work as a cashier for $6 an hour. I'd rather go bartender, wait tables, and make $20, $25 an hour. So I decided that I wasn't going to pursue that job. And I came home from that interview, and it took me several hours to be able to even compose myself enough to tell Ryan what happened in the interview because I was that emotional about it. And after that, my confidence was completely shot. Like, I thought I was useless. I didn't have any skills. I was valueless. Nobody's going to hire me. And I knew that I could go get a job waiting tables somewhere, but I was really trying to make an effort to do something else. I really wanted to push myself out of that comfort zone and do something because I really wanted to do something that mattered. I didn't want to sell alcohol or sell food and upsell somebody on the mashed potatoes. I really wanted to do something that mattered. And so, and we were okay on the one income right now because it was just the two of us in this little tiny apartment. And so I just spent all my time trying to find jobs. And it was just the most depressing. I've never been depressed like I was at that time. And we went from there to find out that's while I was depressed. That is when my health journey, I really have to say, really started because I was home all day long on the computer, bored, not wanting to be on the computer, not wanting to be rejected anymore. And Ryan kept talking about this idea of a bunch of guys at work were doing a paleo diet. And so I said, okay, well, we can try it. I don't know what that is. It's like, I don't know what a diet. I'd never been on a diet before. I didn't know what it meant. But I was like, okay. So I did some research and I found somebody who had done like a 30-day paleo challenge. So I said, okay. What's so funny is that I'm a coach now and that's what I do for my challengers. But I found somebody's blog that had all of the recipes and meal plan out there for you for the paleo diet. And we did it. And we held to it and we were great on it. I was home all day long without a job, unemployed. So I would make breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day for us. And Ryan worked from home. So it was really easy for us to just eat the foods together. And we lost a lot of weight. I think we lost like 22, 25 pounds together between the two of us. And then I started to feel really good. I was only drinking water. I was eating all these healthy foods and fruits and vegetables. And I was doing really well. And it was giving me something to be happy and hopeful about. And it was the week after that challenge, because I was feeling so good about myself, that we got pregnant. And then it just led me back right down my negativity spiral. Like I was doing well, and then I just started eating crap again and feeling like garbage again because I'm pregnant. Now, who the heck is going to hire me now? And so it was the most just defeating time for me, and just continued to just felt like I was just getting beaten up. And I wanted to be excited about a baby, but I knew I needed to make money. And so Ryan and I had this conversation one night and we said, we just have to suck it up and I've got to go wait tables. So I did. I went back to a friend of a friend and reached out and got myself a job waiting tables. And I did that during my pregnancy, but I wasn't happy. I was doing it because I had to get some money in the bank to pay for this baby and baby expenses that were definitely coming our way. And so I was going to work, doing my thing. And I realized about halfway through my pregnancy how crappy I was feeling again. And I remembered how good I felt when I was eating, paleo, when I was supposed to be working out, but we weren't working out. And so I was feeling really good then, and I wanted to get back to that. And I didn't know how, because now I was pregnant, so I didn't know if I was still able to do any of that diet. I didn't know enough about it to know. I just did what I was told. So I reached out to my coach, who is my sister, and was like, I want to be healthy. I want to be healthy for this baby. And I don't know what that looks like or what that means. Like, what do I need to do? And she had just signed up as a coach, and she said, okay, well, I just got this shake and these workouts, and I think you should do them with me. So I did all my research and found the program and did all this research on if I can do it pregnant. And everybody said, yes, it's great if you do it pregnant. Just, listen to your body and modify it when you need to and do it for as long as you can. And I did a bunch of research on Shakeology to make sure it was safe to drink while I was pregnant. And I was blown away, actually, when I did the research because of all of the healthy foods that are in Shakeology. It's not a weight loss shake, which is why it's safe for pregnancy. But because of all the nutrients, I was like, I'm going to give my baby the best of the best of the best. Like, I couldn't eat all of this healthy food, and I don't want to eat all of those things. But the Shakeology is delicious, and it's giving my baby all this awesomeness. So that's where we're at. 7 days in, I decided that I needed to be a coach. I needed to share this with other people. So I did. I started sharing my journey. I didn't have a before and after photo because I have a big belly, pregnant, but I started sharing my journey. And on my 30-day mark, I remember I took pictures again because they tell you to take pictures every 30 days. And so I took pictures again and was just like laughing because I thought it was really silly. But I looked at the photos, and it was actually the one I took from behind of me when I started at like 22 weeks and then at 26 weeks pregnant. And you can visibly see my back, my love handles disappear, which was the coolest thing because my inches were growing, but I was able to shrink. Like when I did my measurements, my legs were shrinking, my arms were shrinking, and my belly was growing forward, but it was like killing my love handles. I was working those out and working on those muscles. So it was really cool. And when I shared that, I had a ton of people interested and just started building a business and have built it since. Have spent my last 2 years now, just over 2 years, sharing my journey with others and helping them get started when they felt like crap and feeling better now. So that's my story. That's who I am and where I'm at, the journey that I'm on now. After I had my daughter, I was diagnosed with hypothyroidism and caused by Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which is an autoimmune disorder. So now I spend my days doing research on that, learning how to better take care of my body and for my own personal benefit, and fighting those symptoms because I can feel extremely exhausted a lot or lose ambition. And it's all because of what I eat most of the time. And when I don't take my supplements or my Shakeology and stuff like that. So I'm constantly trying to get better at that. But that's another piece of that story. But that's who I am. I know I went back really far and talked a lot, but I want you to know that about me and to get to hear about that part of me, because all of those experiences have made me who I am today, have made me relatable, have made me grow, have made me insanely grateful for the life that I live today. I know I get judged by people on Facebook now that think that I just have an easy life. And compared to where I was, my life is 100% easy. Yes, I totally agree. But my life was not handed to me on a silver platter. I was headed in a bad direction, and I made the decision to take responsibility for my life, where I was going, and decided to change in a day, on a dime, and just start working towards better me. And I wasn't a better me the next day, but 10 years, 12, 11 years later, I am unrecognizable from that person that I was at age 19. So for that, I'm incredibly grateful, and I can't wait because I know who I am now, and I know all of my, I'm very fluent with all of my flaws and the ways that I sabotage myself and hurt myself today, and what I have to work on. And so I'm excited to see where I'm going to be in 10 more years to see how much growth I've experienced even from today, and how different my version today is of who I'm going to become in 10 years. Like, that just blows my mind. So I appreciate you listening to my story. I'm going to end this video because I know that this part was long, and I don't think the rest of the questions are going to take as long. So I'm going to do this question by itself, and I'm going to end this video, and then I'm going to do a couple more with the rest of the questions for interviewing yourself to just really know your story and know what to talk about. The biggest piece here that I'm looking forward to is getting this video transcribed. It looks like I'm going to cry, but I'm over that. It's just lighting. But the whole point of me doing this video is so I can get this transcribed. I'm going to use my assistant on Fiverr.com to transcribe this for me. And then I will be able to use this in pieces, not all of it at once, but I'll be able to use pieces of this in chunks on my Facebook page and be able to share my story with the world, right? Not all of those pieces am I ready to share just yet, but there are a lot that I can and that I do want to be able to share. So I'm excited for that. And just to get for me personally to have said these things out loud, because a lot of them I haven't said out loud before, or it's been a long time since I have. So for me to be able to just express this verbally and to be able to have this record for the future is huge for me. So I'm grateful for this opportunity, and I thank you for listening. That's it.